Hello, citizens, and welcome back to another episode of Fist and Jawa Save the Universe. Today, we're going to do something I've been wanting to do for a really long time, but I just haven't had the game in the right state to do it, and it's still not in the right state to do it, but due to some recent conversations I've had in the Discord, by the way, our Discord is open and free to join. The link is in the description below. We're going to talk about stealth in 3.21 / maybe 3.22 and kind of what that is in the game right now and just how it works. To my knowledge, I am by no means an expert in stealth mechanics for Star Citizen, and I'm always up for learning. So if I mess something up, please feel free to correct me politely in the comments below. I'm always looking for help, and it just makes the game a better place when we all share knowledge that you know, some of us making videos may not be perfect and may get wrong. That being said, I will preface that I do make longer form videos, so if that is not your cup of tea, then I'm sorry, but I feel like I need to give an authentic experience, and that's what I think this is going to be. So with that in mind, please check out the below here on YouTube, and there should be chapter markers right down there, and you can skip ahead to whatever you want to see. But first thing we're going to do is hop over into the real world and check out stealth components on Erkul.games. Then we'll hop right back into Star Citizen, and we'll test out mechanics of stealth on the Aegis Sabre, the Aegis Eclipse, maybe even the Razor LX or EX, Razor EX, I believe is the stealth. Maybe if there's any other stealth ships. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Let's get into it. Let's roll that intro and get into stealth. Well, hello everybody. We are here at the Erkul.games section of the stealth video. I am actually reshooting this after I've done most of the primary filming because honestly, the first section was just way too long. And I think I can make this a little bit more concise. That being said, this is probably not the most captivating section, but I do think we have to talk about the stats and the numbers for stealth before we actually go in game and see it happen live, because you're going to see that the stats here on Erkul are not the same as the stats you're going to experience in game. So I am going to go through this stuff pretty quick. If you need to, go ahead and pause the video and rewind or whatever you got to do. But I think it's important to go over this stuff first before we dive into the actual game. So up here at Erkul.games, I have the Sabre up here, and in relation to stealth, which is all we're really going to be talking about here, I want you to keep an eye on a couple different statistics, especially over here on the left, the EM and the IR signature here for the spacecraft. The Sabre has a default of what Erkul calls default EM signature of 5435, and the IR signature, EM being electromagnetic, anything that has to deal with a electromagnetic field created by flow of current, and then it has an IR, which is also known as infrared, which is heat based. An infrared, I don't want to say field, but when heat is generated, infrared is produced. The infrared in the game only changes in one scenario currently with the default iteration of the game, and that is when you turn on IR suppression. We will get into that when we get into the game, but that is the only way it'll change. Right now, it is affected by the different components and different things that are installed, but you're going to see that doesn't have as much bearing as what you're going to think as we go along. Also, keep in mind, there is another component to your signature, and that is your cross-section. That does not change at all in the game. It is the default size of your ship and the angles and things that it produces. meaning an A2, even though it has similar angles to the Sabre. It's a huge honking ship. It's going to have a much bigger cross section than a Sabre would have, being designed as being a smaller stealth fighter. So the other last thing to go about, or to talk about here on Erkul, is that the stealth fighters actually have a negative percentage, or what's supposed to be a negative percentage, on their base stats when it comes to the spacecraft and being detected. According to Erkul, the Sabre should have negative 35% EM, IR, and cross-section across a signature as a basis. I do not know if that is already calculated into the EM and IR stats that present themselves. Now, how do we actually reduce the EM and the IR signature? Really great question. It's really composed of the components that make up the spacecraft, plus the spacecraft's default kind of layout, if you will. So, for instance, this is the stock loadout for the Sabre. It comes with 4 CF337 Panther laser repeaters. If we click on the laser repeater, we're going to see the stats over here on the screen. Sorry if they're small. I'm not going to blow it up in the screen, but I will annotate it to you as we're talking about it. We can see that it has a power to EM of 1.5 and a decay rate of EM of 0.2. It also has a temperature to IR of 2. Well, the power to EM is basically how much EM it contributes to the signature. That is what I'm assuming. I don't know that for sure, but that makes the most sense. The decay rate of the EM is when you're actually in the game and your EM signature is up there, it will increase and decrease based on what you're doing in the game. If you're moving the ship around, if you're firing your weapons, if your shields are getting hit and recharging, your EM will fluctuate. But one thing EM will always do is decay. It will actually go down over time. That is your decay rate here. The higher your decay rate is, the faster your EM will decay over time. It will go back up when you do something else, but if you just sit still and just sit there, it'll decay. A good example of this is when you come out of quantum travel, your EM in a Sabre is up there around 10,000 as a number. It will decay down to like 5,400 or 5,500 within a matter of a minute or so. So after you quantum to, say, a target that you're going to try to stealth kill, after a couple minutes, you're down to your normal EM. So the lower the power to EM number, the lower your overall EM will be contributed to. And the higher your decay rate, the better. The faster your EM will decay, it'll go down. And the lower your temperature to IR, well, the overall lower your IR score will be. Although you're going to see why that's not going to change here much. At least not in the current iteration of Star Citizen. What also contributes, besides those weapons, those 4 weapons, looking at missiles right here, we have stock 2 Thunderbolt size 3 weapons. Those don't have anything on here as far as on Erkul, as far as do they contribute to IR and EM and all that stuff. I imagine that they actually do. But one thing to keep in note is when you turn off your weapons to reduce your overall EM signature, which you can do, your missiles actually stay on. So it's kind of weird. It kind of makes sense because in a stealth vehicle, you want to be stealth further out so you can fire your missiles, and then as you charge in, you're turning on your weapons and your shields. And because of the recharge time of your shields and the faster charge of your weapons, hopefully, by the time you get to the target and you're ready to engage in short range, you'll already have a couple missiles on them that you fired from stealth, and you'll be able to engage with full power. Moving on to the shields. These shimmer shields that are here, they have power to EM of 3, which is fairly high, decay rate of 0.2, just like the Panther repeater, and the temperature of IR of a 4. The Sonic Light power plants, it comes with 2 of those. Temperature to IR 1.75, fairly low. Decay rate of EM 0.2 and power to EM 0.63, and that's times 2 because there's 2 power plants. The coolers, they also contribute to your EM. They 8.25 to EM. That is a lot. Decay rate 0.19 and a temperature of IR to 1.35. And then finally your quantum drive, which is really should only contribute when your quantum is spooling and on. That's when the EM is going to be the highest. The power to EM is 75. Now that is a ratio, right? That 75 is going to translate into a much higher number than just 75, as far as I know. Decay rate 0.2, temperature to IR 2.5. So quite high on all that kind of stuff. And then your thrusters themselves, they will also contribute to your overall EM signature, not so much your IR, because that's kind of fixed. Now, when you turn off shields, of course, your EM will go down, your IR stays the same. I don't think that's the way it should be, because the shimmer shields contribute a 4 to IR, but that's how it works in game. Also, when you just turn off engines altogether, engine shields and weapons, your IR goes down to 0, because you don't have any thrusters going. You don't have anything but basically battery power going on your ship. So now I want to compare components. We're going to start up here with weapons. The Panther CF337, that used to be in the game, if you put on a ballistic cannon, used to have better EM signature. So let's throw on, I don't know, let's say a Sledge 3 mass driver. Well, if we compare the two weapons, the EM and IR, the laser repeater, power to EM 1.5, decay rate of 0.2, temperature to IR is a 2. The mass driver, the ballistic cannon, if you will, power to EM is 1.8, decay rate is 0.5, temperature to IR is 2. So what's higher is the power to EM on the mass driver is actually higher, but it decays faster, and the temperature to IR is the same. If we switch it out to a laser cannon, say an FL33, that power to EM is a 1.8 versus the laser repeater 1.5. The decay rate's 0.25, which is a little bit higher of a decay rate than the repeater, and the temperature to IR is a 2. Are you sensing a pattern with the temperature to IR? Now let's throw on something like a ballistic scattergun, like the Predator size 3. That thing has a power to EM of 0.66, so very low in consideration, and a decay rate of 0.5. However, its temperature to IR is significantly higher at 5.7. So that will, overall change your IR and your EM here. My recommendation, my favorite weapons in the game right now are the, if it's a size 4 or 5, it's a ballistic Gatling, because they have a little bit higher ammo, but in most cases it is a laser repeater. We could go through the rest of these, but I encourage you to go through and find out what your best and favorite stealth build is, with a great balance of power to EM, decay rate, and a temperature to IR. But let's do this right now. Let's say we have this stock loadout. Notice our EM over here at 5435. Let's see what happens when we go ahead and shut off all of our weapon systems, except for missiles, because they don't shut off. That 5435 turns into an EM rating of 4326. That's significantly lower, right? So that's what happens when you turn off weapons. Your EM goes down significantly. Your IR, however, when I turn them back on, they did not change. Even though they probably should change, it looks like the heat signature stays with the weapon, whether it's powered on or powered off. Moving on, let's go over to shields. A shimmer, we already talked about. It had a power of EM of 3, decay rate of 0.2, and a temperature of IR to 4. Well, that's a grade C component, meaning it's a grade 3 out of 4. The best components are a grade 1 or a grade A out of 4. And if we go to stealth, that would be the Mirage. That is a stealth grade A. Well, what's the difference between a shimmer and Mirage? A Mirage actually has a power to EM of 3 compared to the shimmer. Oh, power of EM to 3. A Mirage has a decay rate of 0.2. Well, the shimmer is a decay rate of 0.2, and the temperature to IR is a 4 for both of them. So stealth-wise, they're actually the same. Why is a Mirage a better choice? Well, for starters, it has a higher hit point pool. It has 1725 in shield hit points versus 1500 hit points in the shimmer. And the recharge rate, the regen is 165 hit points a second on the Mirage, and the shimmer has a smaller regen rate of 138 hit points a second. Also, the Mirage is able to take a little bit more distortion damage before it shuts down from basically EMP attacks. So the Mirage is overall a better shield, more hit points, a faster regen rate, and a better against distortion damage. But other than that, it's the same thing. So do you need to upgrade for stealth purposes? No, you can stay the same. And we're going to go ahead and reset the shields, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the shields off. Keep in mind the EM of 5435 is our default. And when I turn off the shields, simulating what I would do in game, my EM goes down to 4254. That is a flat rate because it's going to keep decaying. You got to keep that in mind. The EM is always kind of going to be in flux with depending on what you're doing in the game. So that's pretty significant as well. We'll go ahead and reset the shields back up. And now let's see what happens when I turn off power to weapons and to shields, meaning guns. And let me turn all these off in Erkul. And we went from 5435 to 3145 is our EM. So significantly less, 2000 less, making us hopefully much more stealthy. Now let's keep it going here. The power plants, Sonic Light, Stealth Grade Cs. I'm going to upgrade this power plant to the Slipstream, which is the Stealth Grade A component, and we're going to compare. The Grade A component, the Slipstream, power to EM 0.63. Sonic Light, oh, it's a 0.63. Imagine that. The Slipstream, the decay rate is 0.24, and the Sonic Light is 0.2. So the Slipstream does have a little bit better decay rate of EM. So it technically is more stealthy. Temperature to IR is exact same of 1.75. So why upgrade to the Slipstream? Well, it not only provides more power, which you don't necessarily need, depending on what components you have installed, you don't need more power. The Sabre already has plenty of power. It's not even borderline with the default loadout. It's about halfway. But you do have a little bit better decay rate with the Grade A component, and the distortion damage is the same. That is the main difference there. The power draw request time for the Stealth Grade C, when it actually needs to, power up the ship, takes longer than the Slipstream, meaning the Slipstream is faster to, I don't want to say reboot, but in essence, to reboot, to actually get power from a shutdown position. That's what I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm on the right track there. All right, let's move on over to coolers. Now, you can't just shut down your coolers. There's no keybind for that. Basically, your coolers are still running even with your shields and weapons off. I believe you just have to shut down your engines, your power plants, to shut down your coolers. But in the MFD, you can shut them down individually if you want. So shutting down the coolers takes us from 5435 EM to 5297. However, we're going to overheat real quick if we do that. So the change is not that much. I mean, we're talking a couple hundred on EM, and IR doesn't change at all. Let's go ahead and upgrade these coolers to snowblinds. What's the difference between the Stealth Grade A snowblind coolers and the Bracer military grade C? Well, the snowblind gives you 100. Keep in mind also, sorry to caveat this, the Bracer are military grade C coolers. The snowblinds are stealth grade C coolers. So the Sabre comes with a little bit higher quantity of cooling, with the Bracers at 260,000 cooling per second, and the Stealths are much less. Even the Grade A is 170,000 cooling per second. Well, let's check the difference between the two. The Snowblind gives us a power to EM of 8.25. The Bracer gives us 8.25. That's the same. The decay rate on the Snowblind is 0.28. The Bracer is 0.19. So quite a bit higher on the Snowblind. I mean, we're talking decimals here, but it's still, your decay rate is going to increase faster with Snowblind. And then the Snowblind temperature to IR is 1.35, and the Bracer is the same at 1.35. That is really the only difference, besides the power draw request time for the Grade C components is higher. Bracer's at 12.5, and the Snowblind is at 7.5. If we just go ahead and upgrade 2 double stealth coolers, we're going to have a faster decay rate of EM. And if you look over at the cooling section at 103,000, That's what's required with this current build. Maxed out, those two coolers give us 340,000. We're not even to halfway. You should be more than fine with cooling at this level. I would recommend upgrading to stealth coolers to maintain more stealth, or at least a faster EM decay rate. Now let's take a look at the quantum drive, the Drift Stealth Grade C. That is a stealth drive at 5435 EM in the stock configuration. If we turn it off, it goes to 5416. So basically nothing, basically 20 EM is what that gives us. Looking at the stats for the Drift, power to EM, 75. That's a lot. Decay rate of 0.2, temperature to IR 2.5. Let's upgrade it to the best stealth drive, the Spectre. Well, what do you know? The power to EM is 75, decay rate 0.24, temperature to IR 0.75. So I believe the decay rate is the only thing that changed. Yeah, on the Drift, the decay rate is 0.2. The Spectre, it's 0.24. And then what else does it give you? Well, with the Drift, in the Sabre, because of its mass, you can actually make it from Crusader to Hurston without having to stop for gas. You cannot make it from Microtech to ArcCorp without having to stop for gas. And it actually, the stealth drives are really fast in quantum travel. They're not as fast as military, but they are fast. Max speed of the Drift, 171,318 kilometers a second. The Spectre, the fastest drive, is 201,000, so a little bit faster. However, you cannot make it with the Spectre drive in the Sabre from Crusader to Hurston without stopping for gas. And you're only saving 13 seconds. That's it. You're saving 13 seconds, but it's going to take a lot longer than 13 seconds to stop somewhere, go get gas, call for your services, and then get back on the road. But with shorter hops, it is a little bit faster. I don't think the decay rate of 0.04 is quite worth it. You might want to look at grabbing the Zephyr, because you can make it, that's the grade B, you can make it a little bit quicker, and it's again, it's a 0.22 decay rate. I would just stick with the Drift, to be quite honest. Okay, and your thrusters, you can't just turn them off without turning off power. To turn off power here, if I just turn off my power plants, boom, I dropped everything. Everything's at 0, and guess what? EM is at 0. And your IR stayed the same, but technically in the game, your IR becomes 0 as well, and your CS stays the same because nothing's powered on. So that, in essence, is the Sabre. Let's go ahead and we will upgrade every component. 5435 is our EM. Let's put stealth components, grade A's on everything except the quantum drive. I'm going to do the most detail on this build. Then we're just going to briefly go over the other builds. So 5435, keeping the Drift grade C in there. Oh, look, EM is 5435. It's the same build, even with the better components. I still recommend the better components because they have a better decay rate, you have more hit points, you have faster power access, and you have more cooling. But overall, that didn't really change the base stats for stealth. Okay, let's move on to other stealth vehicles. Let's keep it in the Aegis line, because Aegis has the most for some reason. We'll go to the Eclipse. The Eclipse, base EM 5182, base IR 1828. The Eclipse has negative 30% EM, IR, and CS signature across the aircraft. That's what makes it stealth. Whereas the Sabre had negative 35. The Eclipse has a wider cross section because it's a larger aircraft wingspan wise, but it only comes with 2 size 2 weapons, and it comes with 3 size 9 torpedoes, and its stealth components are all grade B's except for the quantum drive, which is a Drift. Now, this Eclipse is one thing I would recommend going from the Drift quantum drive to the Spectre, because in the Eclipse, you can, with the Spectre, according to Erkul, you can go from Microtech to ArcCorp without having to stop for gas. That's kind of a big deal, right? And you're going to go significantly faster, make it in 6 minutes and 39 seconds versus 7 minutes and 16 seconds. So That's significantly faster enough to justify the cost of the Spectre drive. And you are saving, you're increasing your decay rate of EM just a little bit. I would still recommend upgrading all the other components just to have more hit points in case you do engage in a dogfight. But the Eclipse is made to attack from afar and then get the heck out of there. So, moving on to another Aegis vehicle. We're not going to do the Comet because it's the same thing as the Sabre. It's just has different weapon loadout and a different paint. Let's move on to the Sabre Raven. The Sabre Raven, it's a special promotional thing you have to get. It's through Intel. There's a whole octane drive thing, but technically, according to Erkul, it has the most stealth out of any ship in the game at negative 40% EM signature. Funny enough, when we get to the testing results, it's one of the worst. The EM on this is 6,397, so it's the highest, even though it has the biggest decrease. The IR 1647. It has 2 size 3 Coroller laser cannons, and it has EMPs. We'll get to EMPs in just a second. The rest of the components, except for the coolers, are stealth grade C components. Oh, I'm sorry, and the power plants are military grade D. The reason the power plants are military grade D is because the amount of power that you need to charge up those EMPs. If you don't have big enough power plants, you could end up having issues with the Sabre Raven. 2945 is the military grade D. The best stealth is 1788 as far as power generation. So you might want to consider messing with other power plants. If you threw on the best military grade A power plant, the JS300, stealth wise, let me compare the two. It is a way better when it comes to the decay rate compared to the Charger that it comes with stock. So if you want the most power for your EMPs, I would recommend upgrading to the JS300 because it has a much better decay rate than the Charger power plant. So now that we started talking about EMPs, let's talk about EMPs. The Tromag Burst Generator EMP, it's unique to the Sabre Raven. It's the only one with actually 2 small EMPs. It generates 2 power to EM, a decay rate of 0.15, and a temperature to IR of 6. That's quite a bit. When you turn those off, it does reduce your EM quite a bit. So, and you could also just, when you just have it idle, it reduces the EM. And that's going to be most of the time, unless you're actually using it. It uses the most when you charge. When you are charging something like a shield, a weapon, or an EMP, your EM signature will freeze until that thing is built up, and then you will go back to the idle mode for the different systems that are doing things, right? It also takes more cooling and things like that when things are charging up or firing or whatever. So that being said, you cannot swap out these EMPs. They are bespoke to the Raven. So keep that in mind. As far as that quantum drive is concerned, it's the same thing as the regular Sabre. If you have a drift on there, you can make it to Hurston. The Zephyr, you can make it from Crusader to Hurston, but with the Spectre, the fastest drive, you cannot make it to Hurston in one jump from Crusader or vice versa. I would recommend probably just going with the Zephyr if you can afford that. If not, keep it stock with the drift. Okay, let's move on. We're going to do the Hornet last, so let's go over to Mirai and look at the Razor EX. The Razor EX has the smallest EM, IR, and CS, I guess, buff overall to the space frame, the airframe of the ship. It's only a negative 5% to all 3 of these. It actually, I think in testing, it had the worst performance for detection because it's stealth, but it's not that stealthy. It's kind of in a racing line of the other Razors. That being said, the EM 6041 IR of 2613. It comes with 2 ballistic scatter guns, stock. They're both size 2s. Those things have a powered EM of 0.51, decay rate of 0.5, but a high IR of 4.4. If we swap this guy out with like a laser repeater, we can see that has a much better power to EM, I'm sorry, it has a better temperature to IR, but a worse power to EM. So, you know, there's trade-offs here with different weapons. It comes with 2 size 1 missiles as well. And the components that are on it are all grade C stealth. So 1 shield, 1 power plant, 2 coolers, and 1 quantum drive, the drift. Again, same scenario of the quantum drive as the Sabres. Moving on to the final ship in the lineup, the final real stealth ship, the Anvil Hornet Ghost. The Hornet Ghost has a negative 10% decrease to the EM, IR, and cross-section. It comes with a default EM of 5912 and IR of 2053. However, it is missing some components, and I kind of messed this up a little bit in my testing, but it comes without a nose gun. So default, it just has 2 OmniSky 9 laser cannons. I would recommend always going in, you know, with your hard points filled out. So if we put a 337 on there, a Panther 337, and compare them to the OmniSkies, the Panther 1.5 EM, 0.2 decay rate, temperature to IR of 2. The OmniSky has a higher power of EM to 1.8. They have the same decay rate, and the temperature to IR is a 2. So I would replace the OmniSkies with repeaters, Panther 337s, which is the way I would roll this thing. And you don't replace that center cap, because I believe that is integral to the stealth of that Hornet, I think. It comes with a bunch of different missiles, 4 size 2 heat-seeking or infrared, and 4 size 1 marksmans, which are also infrared. These stock components are 2 grade C shimmer shields, which I would upgrade to Mirages for the better EM drop, faster boot time, and more hit points. The power plant, the Slipstream, is already a stealth grade A, and it looks like it's kind of close to max. It's about a little more than 3/4. You should be okay, but with upgrading the shields, and maybe if you upgrade weapons and things, you might have to go to a different component, something like a military component. The coolers comes with, 2 heat-safe stealth grade C components, coolers, which is plenty. I don't think you need to change the coolers out unless you want that small increase in decay rate. And it comes with an EOS civilian grade C quantum drive, which is not that fast. However, if you go to the stealth, it's the same scenario as the Sabres. The drift will get you 1 jump Crusader to Hurston without having to stop for gas, but you can't make it from ArcCorp to Microtech. That being said, the drift power to EM is 75. The EOS power to EM is 75. Decay rate 0.2. Temperature to IR 2.5. The drift decay rate 0.2. Temperature to IR 2.5. So stealth wise, they're exactly the same. So maybe for a civilian, you either go to a Voyage or you go to an Atlas, which the Atlas is the civilian grade A. It's the same exact, it's actually just a skill 0.02 better on the decay rate. And it has, it's a little bit faster than the EOS, not incredibly faster. You can even go with military drives like the VK. You don't want to go to the VK00. Actually, just stay with civilian drives. Atlas or the Voyage being one of the fastest. You could also even look at the burst, which I wouldn't recommend because you can't make the second jump. But the Voyage, you can make those jumps, and it's the same stealth stats as the Atlas. So go with the Voyage, which is a civilian grade B for the quantum drive. And that is it for the Erkul stealth stats. Stay tuned. We're going to pop into the game and kind of go over some of the keys and some of the basic stealth stuff and do, I think, a PvE mission. And we'll get into that right now. All right, folks, so we're back here in Star Citizen. I want to bring up my Mobi-Glass, take a real quick look at the components for the Aegis Sabre. The ship we're going to be basing everything off here as the stealth fighter. If you look at the 3D model here, it is very angular. It looks pretty stealthy, except for those gigantic intakes it has, but I really do like that look. It has the red glass for the cockpit. Those wings fold back and spread out, depending on the landing gear configuration. Let's take a look at the systems. As you can see, I've upgraded everything to stealth grade A components. So we have the stove-lined coolers in there, slipstream power plants, Spectre quantum drive, which is, I would still recommend the drift, but the Mirage shield generators as well. It doesn't have any special paints on it. And the weapons are the stock weapons, 2 Arrestor 3 missiles, 2 Thunderbolt 3 missiles, the Panther laser repeaters ×4. So that is the loadout for the Sabre. We're going to go ahead and hop into the ASOP terminal, call the ship, take a real quick look, and then get out on the road and kind of check the stats in real time. All right, folks, so here we are in the back of the Sabre here. It looks like it's been salvaged. These weird models that we get called up for a ship that actually hasn't been damaged are very interesting in the game, but regardless, it looks just like it did in the 3D model, except for the damage that doesn't exist. It's got our laser cannons, one there, one here, CF337s, the giant intakes, and overall it's a pretty small spacecraft in comparison. So let's go ahead and hop into the ship. I'm doing this right now because I want to show you what we're going to see for EM and IR here in the hangar. We'll go ahead and turn the ship on. Everything is charging up right now. Our weapons, our shields, all that fun stuff. Shields are actually already charged because I left power on. But up here in the middle of your screen, kind of hard to see sometimes, we're going to have these 3 different statistics. This is above the compass. To your left is the infrared, which is 4573. And really, that's not going to change unless we turn power off. It does say /294, and I have no idea what that slash means. I don't know if it means it's cooling down or it's heating up or what. I don't know what the slash means. Maybe it's some kind of a ratio. In the middle, we have the cross section of 7800. For the Sabre, that really hasn't changed. That'll stay, that cross section, no matter what we do. Landing gear up, down, it doesn't matter. And to the right, the one that changes constantly is our EM 4939/0. It's actually kind of funny, it's not decaying right now. Maybe 4939 is truly the base with everything charged up. Who knows? Also, it's kind of hard to see, but as I move my head kind of to the top left of the screen, you can see as like a helmet HUD, I have EM and IR, and that actually has my current EM and IR rates, and it will show a graph as it moves over time. So keep that in mind. Now I want you to look at the IR rating of 4573. We're going to show you how to actually change that. Sometimes this likes to work, sometimes it doesn't. On the heat screen on the MFD, if I go to menu and then I go to heat, I click suppress overall IR. You can see my IR 4573, and when I suppress it, now it's 3705. That is the only way in game to actually suppress your IR. When you're on the power screen here and it actually says stealth right here as a button, if I click that, it basically limits my power usage to that of what it considers stealth. You can easily overheat your ship if you use this setting. I do not recommend this setting. So you might want to just, I don't know how to reset that. F8, F7. F8 is the center. I don't know if that actually screwed anything up or not, but we'll turn power off on the ship. Maybe that'll actually reset it. As I turn power back on, you'll notice my IR is still suppressed, and hopefully that stealth setting actually changed. But regardless of that, let's take this thing out. We're gonna come up a little bit. We're gonna put the landing gear in. Notice my EM is already changing because I was moving the ship. Now it's actually going down, 51, 50, 51, etc., etc. I can see my IR actually spiked and went down too if I look at the my display on the left. So we want to come up here and make sure we don't hit anything. as we're leaving Seraphim. And we're just going to come out here and cruise just above Crusader. Now, as we're just at cruising speed with full shields, full weapons, you'll see that our EM is actually starting to decay. We're now 5,400 and going down. As we ramp up our engines, look at our EM, it went up. Now it's back, it was almost 5,470 or so. And now our engines are spooling up. It's still decaying. And now that our engines have reached a point of equilibrium where we're going as fast as we can, our EM is decaying much, much quicker. That's just one of the big things here. You're going to see that with Quantum as well. When I engage the retro thrusters and actually go, start slowing down the Sabre, you can see our EM it went up and then it went down. As I move my thrusters around, you're going to see my EM kind of neutralize. It'll go up, it'll go down. Anytime you really do anything, change your EM. As I fire my weapons, the EM went up. As the weapons are recharging, EM, there we go. The EM changed again. The decay rate changes depending on what you're doing. So let's take this basic SCM speed decay rate and let's go ahead and hit O, and we're going to turn off shields. We're at 5220. Turn off shields, we went down to 4390 or so. We're going to go ahead and turn off weapons from 4350. And we went down to 3480 roughly, and it's still decaying. So this right now with shields and weapons down would be the state that I would actually be going into a stealth mission with. I'm going to go ahead and hit missiles. Notice my missiles are actually still there. They're still on. They're still able to be fired as well. Even though my guns aren't on because I don't have any power to my guns. And my decay rate is still going down. So I am going to go ahead and turn on power to shields and weapons. You notice my EM jumped up. Oh, there we go. It jumped up to 5280 roughly. And it's slowing down as far as the decay rate goes. My weapons are charged. And now it's decaying even faster because those Mirage shields charge really fast. So that is kind of, I want to say, the basics of stealth and flight and things like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try to find a dogfighting mission, and we're going to turn off weapons and shields and head into that. We're gonna turn our missiles on, and we're gonna see how long it takes before they actually detect us as a PvE mission, and then hopefully get our missiles away, turn our systems back on, and engage in the dogfight. So stay tuned for that. One thing I want to show you guys and take into account, I just turned my quantum drive on, and notice my EM signature 9800 with the quantum drive on. And now that it's fully charged and spooled, its decay rate is pretty darn slow. We're gonna go ahead and quantum. Notice everything zeroes out while we're in quantum, so I'm sure that's just the game developer's way of saying, hey, you don't have anything stealth-wise. When we come out of quantum, let's get rid of the comlink stuff. Notice our EM up here is at 10,000. It was pretty high. So we're going to continue on to the mission, and I'll be with you in just a minute. All right, everybody, we're about 20 kilometers from the target. I had to fly about 50K to get here, and that gave me time for my EM to spool down after turning shields and weapon systems off. And I don't even have a target yet. I don't have any ships on my radar yet. 16 kilometers. We're just going here along at SCM speed. Should have a pretty low signature here. Closing in on 14K. Oh, the target thing went away and it changed over to neutralize. 12K. I know I can't fire these weapons except from 10K out. Still don't have a marker on the screen yet. I can't target anything, and I'm just going to keep on going. Expecting him to see me somewhere under 4 or something like that. 9,000 meters. I still don't see them, so it makes me wonder what kind of ship they are in. Boom, I saw them, and they're at 8,600. As I'm targeting them, they're maybe moving and turning a little bit, but they don't really see me. So I could just fire my missiles right now, and then as I'm charging in, I turn on shields and weapons, and then engage in combat. I still don't think he sees me yet. I'm slowing down 6,300 meters. I haven't heard anything on the radio yet. Yeah, he's just still chilling there. He is flying around. He's in a miscall A. Or maybe it's his friend. No, yes, your smoke is the actual target. I'm within 5,600 meters, and he's still not heading towards me. He's just kind of flying around a little bit. Normally you get kind of a radio call when they see you, and then they'll shoot missiles at you. For some reason, my missiles are not, there we go. Now it's locking. My Thunderbolt 3s are locking. My Arrestor 3s did not want to lock. We're at 4.7 kilometers, coming in a little more. Looks like he still doesn't see me yet. He's still not actually flying towards me. At 5.5K, I did have him show up on my radar. So he's still just kind of flying around doing his little thing. I could definitely just shoot my missiles and go in after him. We want to see when he actually sees me. All right, 4 kilometers. I'm under the 4. No radio call yet. He's not beating feet towards me. 3,700. Oh, 3,600. My EM is pretty darn low right now. 3,640. I mean, I don't think he sees me yet. 3,200. This is really close. And sometimes it matters if they're turned towards you with the front of their ship when they can spot you. I see him just flying around a little bit. I don't see him doing a whole lot. There we go. Now he targeted me. So I know he sees me. I'm going to fire my missiles. Turn on my shields. Turn on my weapons. Boom. And now we're charging weapons. And I'm going to give it a little throttle. Oh, yeah. Shields are critical. I mean, now you see why we fire from so far away. Because they're slowly charging. But I did manage to hit him with those missiles, I believe. Not that it's going to be that hard to kill a whole A. Good thing we have reshade and we can actually see things on the dark side of moons and planets. I'm increasing the charge. For some reason, one of my weapons decided it doesn't want to work. Sometimes you gotta love this game. Okay, and there he goes after recharge was done. And he's falling down to the moon. I'll turn off my weapons, turn them back on. Hey, and now they all want to charge. So what do we do when we have a target we really, really don't like? We blow up the whole ship. Okay, so there we go, guys. That basic stealth combat mission, I probably would have fired my weapon or my missiles somewhere around 6 to 7K, maybe switch them off and relock. He didn't see me till I was under 3,500, which you got to have enough time to come charging in with your shields and your weapons powered on. And there you go. That's basic stealth combat at a basic level in Star Citizen in patch 3.21. Stay tuned for more. All right, folks, so now we're going to get to sort of I guess a boring part where we're actually going to bring up spreadsheets and talk about stats that I have recorded with JawaSparky on these stealth ships, spaceships. And we're going to look at when they can be detected, when they detect other things, some of the EM and IR and cross-section stats. And keep in mind, this is only one round of testing with 2 controls. I guess 3 controls. And it's probably not super revealing, but I feel the numbers are pretty well justified. So just please keep that in mind. I'm going to loop in some video footage of everything as well and kind of go back and forth. So I guess now you get to see the real me as we do this on real video. Well, welcome back, everybody. Fist-25 here in real time, real life, and I just finished filming the different sequences for stealth, and I think we have some pretty interesting results. Definitely not what I expected. But as my Star Citizen avatar said, please keep in mind that this is only one run. I didn't do multiple trials. These aren't really average statistics, and it's with the EM decay, it's kind of hard to capture EM all the time because it is consistently decaying. One thing I did notice is that when your weapons are powering up and when your shields are powering up, your EM decay stops until they do power up, and then it keeps decaying. So having a good EM decay on the components you have, and I guess the shipping general didn't matter so much, but with the components and a higher EM decay, that did seem to matter. It seems like some components don't matter as much as others. And what was really surprising was the control we did on the F7C. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to different pieces here. We're going to start with the Sabre, the stock Sabre, and we're going to cut into an edited version of me going out and getting picked up. And when we can pick up the Terrapin, Jawa was in a Terrapin. It is a ship made for scanning, so that's why we used a Terrapin. We didn't use another ship. I figured, hey, let's use an actual scanning ship. The Terrapin was completely stock. It was rented from IAE. And we're going to cut through those different ones. We'll start with the stock Sabre, then we'll go to the Sabre Stealth, the Eclipse Stealth, Raven, the Sabre Raven Stealth, the Hornet Ghost Stealth, Disc Razor EX, and then the F7C Stock and the F7C Stealth. When I say stealth, or full stealth, if I say that, that means the ship has weapons powered off, shields powered off, IR suppression is on. So IR is being suppressed, and the only things really generating EM would be any components that are on and the engines, surprisingly, which didn't really change IR. So after that, we're going to come back to a different screen where we're going to look at my desktop and a fancy spreadsheet. Not fancy. And we're going to go over the numbers and just basically look at what is surprising to me and what stood out to me with each ship. There's only a few ships on here, so I know this spreadsheets may be boring, but maybe somebody wants to know my opinion on this, and I hope you do. Let's dive into more stealth. First up is the stock Sabre Stealth Fighter. Okay, this is the stock Sabre test. Started at 16 kilometers. Now I'm at 15. I don't have you on a blip. Let me know as soon as I blip in that I'm targetable. It's 14 kilometers. I'm not able to target you. 10 kilometers. I'm not able to target you yet. 7,500. There we go. I got you targeted. You have a target lock, or I mean, you have that you've been targeted, but you don't see me yet. Okay, let me know as soon as you see me, and you can just basically hit T a bunch. 7,000, 7 kilometers. Still nothing. 5,500. I now actually have you on a direction on my radar. Right there at about what? About 4,200? Okay. All right, coming up next is the Sabre Stealth Fighter in full stealth mode. Full stealth components, IR suppressed, weapons and shields turned off. Okay, this is a full stealth Sabre with IR suppressed and guns and shields down. Passing 9,000, can't target. 7,800, 7,700. There we go, I got you at 7,600. 6,500. Last time you got me at 4,200. Passing 5,500. I have you on radar. That was the same as the previous Sabre. Passing 5,000. 4,300. Okay, we're at 4,250. 4,200. 36. There we are. 30. Let's say 3,650. Yeah, I'm gonna say 3,650 is when you got me. Next up is the Aegis Eclipse, the torpedo bomber in full stealth mode, if you please. Okay, this is the Aegis Eclipse, full stealth build with guns and shields off and IR suppressed. All right, I'm gonna start heading towards you at 9,900 meters. Passing 8,500. No target yet. Oh, I got you right at about 7,750. You have not. There you are. You're on my radar now at 5,400 meters. Passing 4,600. 42. 41. 4,000. Coming down to 3,900. 3,850. Under 3,600. Right there? Okay. We're going to call that about 3,450. All right, next up in the video is the Sabre Raven in full stealth mode. When the weapons are off, the EMPs are off. So, here we go. Okay, this is the Sabre Raven with full stealth, shields off, weapons off, EMP off. Coming in. All right, we're starting at 10 kilometers. Doing at SCM speed. Passing 8,000. Nothing. Okay, I got you at 7,900. All right, passing 5,500. I have you on radar. Passing 5,000. 4,500. 4,300. I have to halt my velocity while I'm being scanned. 4,311, and you still can't see me. Right at about 3,700. 3,650. Oh, there we go. So let's call that 3,650 is when you detected me, which is the exact same as the Sabre with full stealth. All right, folks, next up is the Anvil Hornet Ghost stealth-ish fighter. Okay, this is a full stealth Hornet Ghost with 3 Panther laser repeaters, IR suppressed, weapons and shields are off. All right, we're at about passing 9,000. Oh, right there. I got you at about 7,500. 5,500. I have you on radar. 4,400. 4,300. 4,000. Pretty good so far. 3,800. There we go. 30. Call that 3,650. Say it's the same as the Sabre. All right, folks. Now we're gonna look at the MISC Razor EX, the quick and small, little tiny stealth fighter. Okay, so we are in a full stealth Razor EX with weapons and shields off and IR suppressed. We're 10 kilometers out. We're gonna start making our way downtown. I gotta be careful because this is a fast ship. There we go. I got you at 70, roughly 7,800. Passing 6,500. 6,000. 5,600. 5,500, you showed up on my radar. 5,550. All right, 5,300. Do you have my partner marker? There you go. 5,300, basically. And now we're going to look at the first of the two control ships, the standard F7C Hornet, with no stealth components on it. This is a non-stealth version. IR is not suppressed. Everything is turned on, power to weapons and shields. I did forget to put a third gun on it, so it might skew the stats with the full stealth build, but this is the F7C Hornet. All right, we are in a stock Hornet F7C with no stealth components. Weapons and shields are online, and IR is not suppressed. We're about 9,800 meters from Jawa, and I just need to wait for my EM to bleed down to non-quantum levels, and we can start our journey towards him. All right, I am about there. I'm gonna head towards you. Oh, I have you right there. Yeah, I had you at 7,500. Do you have me? No? You're in a terrapin. Thought that was a skating ship. You should be able to get me much sooner. Definitely have you on radar past 5,500. Past 5,000. All right, right there, about 4,800. Which is, for you've detected me further away than the stock Sabre, 600 meters further away. So maybe that gives you an extra second to evade. And following up the Hornet is the last of the controls, the F7C Hornet in full stealth mode with IR suppressed, power off to weapons and shields. And I did add that third gun, although it really shouldn't matter because power's off. And we're going to see what it does. All right, so now we are in a fully stealthed Hornet F7C as the other control. IR is suppressed, guns and shields are down. We're going to proceed towards Jawa from 10 clicks away. Passing 8,000, nothing. I should pick you up at 7,500. Yep, 7,600. That's when I picked you up. Okay, you're on my radar now at past 5,500. 100, 4,300. Nothing yet, huh? 4,100. You still don't have me yet, huh? Okay, I'm at 4,000. Right just above 4,000 meters, which is 800 meters better than a non-stealth Hornet. So that's pretty significant. Stealth components do seem to work. I can, you picked up the Sabre before you picked up the Hornet in stealth, but that was a stock Sabre. All the other stealths, except for the Razor, you were under, yeah, they were all around 3,500 on average. 3,600, 3,500. All right, folks, so now that that is all wrapped up, let's head on back to me, and we're gonna do live video here, and I want to talk about the results that we found and my final findings when it comes to stealth in Star Citizen patch 3.21.1. Thanks for watching so far. All right, guys, so we're back here at the actual statistics screen. You can see I have Microsoft Excel up here, and I have a bunch of stats built into a spreadsheet. The first thing I want to talk about is the Aegis Sabre stock loadout. I mean, this is completely stock here. It was actually pretty surprising to me how stealthy it was. Completely stock. It does have some stealth components to it. They're just not grade A. Components seem to matter a little bit, but not as much in the grand scheme of things. So we can see the infrared suppression off, 4573. The IR suppression on, 3705. Let's actually compare the stock Sabre with the stealth Sabre, right? So the infrared suppression was the same for both of them. Off, 4573. IR suppression on was 3705. The cross section is the same on both, 7800. It ended up being the third lowest cross section. The EM, the basic EM, kind of what I gathered, it was hard to figure out EM because of the decay rate, but I basically gathered it was about 5,400 as a base statistic. The EM with no shields on ended up being 4,410 on the stock ship, 4,400 on the stealth. So that really didn't change much. The EM with no, I need to widen this out. The EM with no guns ended up being 4,200 on the stock ship and 4,300 on the full stealth build. And then the EM with no shield and no guns, again, a 100 disparity, 3,500 on the stock ship, 3,400 on the full stealth build. When we took the Sabre out, it was detected with no suppression of IR. It was detected by Jawa at 4,200 meters, which is pretty darn close. So that does indicate that there is some stealth there. Whereas the Sabre with a full stealth build and IR suppressed went 3,650 before it was found out. And that is a common theme here because the Raven was the same and the Hornet Ghost was the same. So 3,650, it got closer. When you're talking about speeds in Star Citizen, you can go from 4,200 to 3,650 in a heartbeat. It goes really, really quick. I mean, we're talking about under 400 meters, 350 meters, and that goes by real fast, especially if you're at speed. So, but if you're trying to go for stealth and those stealth kills, I guess you're going to be going slower and paying more attention. One thing to note, a comment was we were able to detect the Terrapin consistently at 7,500 meters every single time. So that is pretty much the detection range of the Terrapin with another ship. And that's probably due to its IR being not suppressed, its cross-section, its basic EM. It had shields and guns and all that stuff online. The other thing that's not in the comments here is that we were able to get the Terrapin on the radar at 5,500 meters pretty consistently every single time. So that is, again, something that is the Terrapin right there. Okay, let's move on to the Eclipse. It's IR with suppression off 4,417, with suppression on 3,578, which was very low. It's the second lowest IR suppression, which kind of nice. The cross section was fairly large, not as large as the Hornets, but 9,101. And that is a long ship. It's got those long wings, kind of like a B-2 bomber. Its EM was the second highest at 6,100 base EM. The EM with no shields on, 6,000, so only 100 difference. With no guns, it was 5,900, so only 200 difference from base. And with no guns and shields, it dropped down to 4,450, which is pretty much on the high end here. The only thing higher was the Misk Racer of all things. And it's probably because the Razor had shotguns. Or maybe not. I don't know. Things are wacky. It had the best detection stealth capabilities. The Eclipse wasn't detected until we were at roughly 3,450 meters. It's real close to that 3,650, but 200 meters closer on average. It was able to get a little closer. It should have been, because it technically, by Erkul stats and stuff like that, it should be less stealthy overall. So interesting on the Eclipse, and considering you're going to be firing those torpedoes, you're really not going to be dogfighting with it from much longer range. That's a good thing. The Aegis Sabre Raven in full stealth, the IR was 3,803 stock without suppression, and that's the lowest IR out of any of the ships. With IR suppression on, I had it, 3,081, which is 800 lower. That is super significant. The cross section at 7,201, the second smallest. The only thing smaller was the Razor EX, which makes sense because it's a tiny little ship. The EM was 4335, so the lowest EM and the lowest IR and the second lowest cross-section. This ship, by all accounts, should be the stealthiest in-game, as it has negative 40%, according to Erkul. The EM with no shields, 3500, with no guns, 3280, no shielded guns, 2450. So, like, fully stealthed out, 2450, and that means the EMs were also off. The EMPs, I should say. The EMPs were off. It was able to be detected at 3650. So even though it is more stealthy in all aspects, ship, IR, cross-section, everything, it was still detected at this exact same range as the Sabre. One thing to note, that the EM did jump up to 6,000 when the EMPs were turned on. But once the EMPs were charged, the EM started to decay again. The Anvil Hornet Ghost. With IR off, it was 4731. With IR suppression on, 3832. The CS, the cross-section, 10,800, which is lower than the stock F7C Hornet. The EM signature, 5,700, which is kind of on the high end here. All three things were higher, so it's right in the middle. EM with no shield, 4,400. EM with no guns, 4,800. And EM with no shield or guns, 3,400, which is the same as the Sabre, fully stealthed out. And it was detected at, ding, 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 3,650 meters. So even though it shouldn't be as stealthy as the Sabre or the Raven, it was the exact same for detection. The MISC Razor EX IR, really high, the highest out of all of them, 6655. Maybe that's because it's meant to be a racing ship, I don't know. The IR suppression took it down to 5391, which is still the highest out of all of them. The cross-section was the lowest at 5226. The EM was at 5500, which right in the middle there. The EM with no shield, 4850. EM with no guns, 5430. And the EM with no shield or guns, 4700. Still on the high end. It's actually the highest out of any of them. So that's interesting. And the Razor was the worst for detection. It was detected at 5,300 meters, which means a stock Sabre and a stock F7C were more stealthy than a stealth MISC Razor with full stealth components. Now let's get down to the controls. The stock F7C Hornet, IR suppression off 4941, suppression off 4002. That's over 900 on IR suppression. Pretty darn good. Cross section of 1200. EM of 5900. EM with no shield 4400. EM with no guns 5200. EM with no shield and guns 3650. Which I guess it's respectable for a ship that's not stealth. It's actually lower, and take into account decay rate, it was lower than the full stealth F8C. It was detected at 4,800 meters, which is pretty darn good, considering it's not a stealth ship. It was worse than the stock Sabre, but not by much. 600 meters goes by real fast. And the one caveat here is when I was taking out the Hornet, I forgot to put on a CF337 on the nose, which I had basically on every other ship except the Razor EX, which a caveat for that may be that it has 2 Havoc shotguns attached to it. I just left it stock weapons. It shouldn't really matter because the weapons were turned off in a full stealth build, but the weapons were turned on here in the F7C. So it probably should have been higher with that extra weapon, but not a ton. It might have been detected at, say, closer to 5,000 meters if that was the case. And lastly, the F7C in a full stealth build with the CF337 attached to the nose. It had an IR of 5041, so a little bit higher than the stock, or yeah, higher than the stock build. An IR suppression turned on and went down to 4083. Again, maybe that's because of the, it's probably because of the extra laser weapon here. Cross section stayed the same, 12,000. The EM went up to 6,200. No shields, 4840. No guns, 5200, which is the exact same as the stock control F7C. The EM with no shield and guns, it was at 3800, which is higher than the other control for the F7C. But again, I can't explain it. That may be a decay rate thing, but I did wait the same amount of time. So the full detection of the F7C, which is not a stealth ship, was 4,000 meters. So the second worst, the worst was the Razor, but it's stealthier than the Razor with stealth components. It beat out the stock F7C by 800 meters, and that could be significant if you're trying to stealth up on somebody. So there we go. That is the boring spreadsheet part here with the stats. I encourage you to do your own research. And now we're going to go on to final thoughts and takeaways and wrap up this video. All right, guys. So wrapping up the video here, I'm sitting here staring at the spreadsheet, and I know you can't see it on the screen, but I want to sort these things. The smallest IR suppression with suppression off was the Sabre Raven by 600 on the next lowest, which was the Eclipse Stealth. The IR suppression on, again, it was the Sabre Raven Stealth and then the Aegis Eclipse. The lowest cross section was the MISC Razor EX. Makes sense, it's the smallest ship. Second lowest was the Sabre Raven Stealth, which again makes sense, it's the smallest ship. The smallest EM signature, base EM signature, was the Sabre Raven Stealth. Makes sense, it should be, because it's on Erkul, it's negative 40% stealth. The next highest was the stock Sabre and the Sabre full stealth at 5400. That's pretty significant. That's about 100 away from the Sabre Raven. The lowest EM with no guns or shields turned on, which I figure I'd just combine them, was the Sabre Raven Stealth 2450. The second lowest was the Sabre at 3400 full stealth, and then the Hornet Ghost at 3400, and then just behind that the stock Sabre at 3500. The detection radiuses, that kind of makes sense there. The Sabre stock was 4,200 meters. The Hornet stock was 4,800 meters. So those are our kind of two of the controls there. The Sabre should be stealthier. It's a stealth fighter, right? The stock F7C, it was impressive, but you know, maybe that 600 meters makes a big difference. And the full detection of stealth for the smallest was the Aegis Eclipse, which was the most surprising, because it, stat-wise, at least game files, if Erkul is up to date, it should be not the stealthiest, but it was. It ended up being the stealthiest. Then we have a tie for the Sabre Raven, the full stealth Sabre, and the Hornet Ghost at 3650. Then we have the F7C stealthed out, stealth components at 4,000 meters, and the MISC Razor EX as the worst one at 5,300 meters. So my overall takeaway is that the Sabre's a good stealth fighter. It's got 4 size 3 weapons. It's pretty darn good. I don't think the Sabre Raven is necessarily super stealthy. It can stealth, but when you have those EMPs coming, 1, they'll probably be able to see you. And 2, it's got 2 guns. And when you're coming in, you're coming in to hit EMP. You don't have any missiles. So are you gonna stealth EMP somebody? Is that kind of the point? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you see the role of the Raven being. It's kind of an interceptor with EMP. It is very quick, I'll give it that. The Hornet Ghost, it was just kind of average all around. It wasn't particularly stealthy, comparatively, and I don't know. I still like it. Who doesn't like the Black Hornet, though? The Miss Grazer EX, I was disappointed with the whole way. Maybe that would have changed if I would have put different guns on it. I'll have to try that in the future when I'm testing. But overall, I'd say the best overall stealth ship is the Eclipse. Probably as it should be, because that thing just oozes stealth. Second best, I would say, would be the Sabre, and then the Sabre Raven, and then the Ghost, and then the Razor. So let me know what you think in your comments below. What have you found out in your testing? Overall, stealth is broken. I know they're going to do component overhaul and things like that, and we're going to see massive changes to stealth in this game eventually, but I haven't seen a ton of that information on the roadmap, so I don't know when they're going to rework those components. I hope soon, but maybe not. I mean, when do you guys think stealth is going to be a viable gameplay option when it comes to things like that? Is it going to be part of Bounty Hunting V2? Because stealth might matter on that, you know? Who knows? I don't know. But it's been an awesome journey figuring this out, and I apologize that this is boring. I mean, if you think it's boring for you, imagine Jawa sitting there in space in a terrapin, just waiting for me to go get ship after ship after ship, and just sitting there and hitting T a bunch of times, trying to target me and figure out when I'm coming in. So big shout out and a thank you to JawaSparky for help with this. Other than that, I'm Fist-25 signing out stealthily, and good night, Stan.